The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, presented by Deborah L. Seeley. The Wind in the Willows was published first in 1908 and quickly became a beloved children's book. It has been published over 50 times in the last 110 years, 40 of which had different illustrations each time. Since the advent of television and movies, there have been over a dozen different adaptations, everything from cartoons to live action, stop motion to CG. There have been countless stage productions of the story as well, both professional and amateur. The BBC has produced dozens of radio shows of and inspired by the classic tale, and Disneyland has a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, one of the few attractions still running from the original grand opening in 1955. Kenneth Grahame's imaginative tale has been prolifically reproduced at the very least. It has delighted countless children and adults over the years and will most likely continue to do so for years to come. The Wind in the Willow started out as bedtime stories Kenneth Grahame told his son Alastair. At first they were all about Toad and his misadventures, but eventually the other characters were added and the story became more complete. Even when Grahame was away on business, he would write letters home to his son, continuing the tale. Publishers were not interested in the story at first, and it was due in part to influence from Teddy Roosevelt that the book was published at all. The publishers thought that there wouldn't be much interest in the book, but, quote, the public loved it, however, and within a few years it sold in such numbers that many reprints were required. The rest, as the saying goes, is history, end quote. The Kenneth Grahame Society. Like most children's books of its age, this one is full of cautionary tales designed to encourage children to make wise decisions. The theme is one of friendship, although there is conflict as well as resolution. There are highs and lows to every good friendship. The ones in this book are no exception. Some of the conflicts came about because of Mole's childlike behavior and willfulness, such as tipping a boat over because he decided to try rowing before he was ready, or going into the woods at night and almost getting attacked by weasels. The rest is pretty much due to Toad's spoiled and entitled nature. He is reckless in how he drives and actually goes to prison for stealing someone else's car. In the end, though, it is their very strong connection and love for each other that gives Badger, Mole, and Rat the courage to speak to Toad plainly and to tell him that he has to change his behavior and become a better Toad, which he does, much to the relief of all who know him. The characters of Mole, Rat, Toad, Badger, as well as supporting characters are all richly written and unique in their anthropomorphization. While not the first author to attribute human characteristics to animals, Kenneth Grahame certainly is one of the earliest in printed literature, and was influential for many great authors that followed him. Not only were the animals wearing human clothing, but their personalities were rife with human behaviors and foibles as well. Of the four main characters, the child, the teenager, the irresponsible adult, and the responsible elder were represented, almost clichaic in nature. Perhaps simple would be a kinder term to describe their personalities, but this is a children's book after all. Mole is the first character to be introduced. He has a sweet, innocent air and has lived a sheltered life thus far, so as he experiences the river for the first time, we get to learn about it with him. His childlike demeanor leads to some sticky situations and life-threatening events. Even though he is quiet and trusting, Mole is also adventuresome, which is a unique combination of qualities. And, like a child, Mole can be rather willful. The river rat, or Ratty as he is often called in the book, is a savvy creature whose home is right above the water's edge in the riverbank. He has a boat that he takes Mole out in and eventually teaches how to row. He takes on the role of Mole's friend and teacher of sorts, even going so far as to invite Mole to move in with him. In human years, Rat is a teenager to Mole's child, and has a bit more sense to tamper down his friend's reckless air. Rich and spoiled, Toad has a very short attention span. He obsesses over some method of making fun for a while and then moves on to the next. First it was all kinds of boats, and then a gypsy wagon, and finally his fancy is caught by an automobile. This modern marvel leads to a lot of trouble for Toad, who eventually ends up sentenced to prison for 20 years. But, being the irresponsible creature that Toad is, he escapes from prison and heads back home only to find that weasels and stoats have taken over Toad Manor. A valiant battle is undertaken to win back Toad's home, followed by a banquet for neighbors to celebrate the fact that Toad is now a changed creature. Badger is the old curmudgeon of the group, the adult of the merry band of friends, if you will. It is as Ratty said, quote, Badger hates society and invitations and dinner and all of that sort of thing, end quote. Grahame. Yet he is loyal to his friends and acts as protector of sorts. It is Badger that gives counsel and the voice of reason to the others. When Toad is arrested, it is he and Mole that guard Toad Manor and end up getting beaten for the trouble. Once Toad escapes prison, Badger is the one that comes up with the plan to take Toad Manor back from the Weasels, and at the end of the story encourages Toad to become a changed creature. His character is needed in this children's story as the mature point of view, although he doesn't seem to have as big a role in it as the other creatures do. All in all, I found The Wind in the Willows to be a delightful story. While a bit predictable, the storylines are amusing and at times deep. Kenneth Grahame's life was full of tragedy, but he managed to write this beautiful story, as well as several lesser-known ones, that have stood the test of time, entertaining countless generations of readers, and I am very glad that I got the opportunity to get to know this book.